Well, the show is ready to begin, but am I ready to begin? It's an interesting query, isn't it? You would think I would have been extraordinarily ready, but I looked down at the last freaking second and it said I was on somebody else's page getting ready to broadcast. So now, now the real broadcast begins. I think I've done this correctly now. All right, welcome to Ken Goldberg's Law and Disorder. I should probably turn off my phone. Okay, so AJ texted me about, 4 hours ago. Her boyfriend, fiance, got her tickets to Grateful Dead. I can't compete with Grateful Dead, so she went to Grateful Dead, and I got to do the show by myself. I thought about getting somebody over here to kind of help, but I thought, well, I've done that before when I had the radio show in my early days, and I had a couple of disasters. So I was afraid of a disaster. And then I thought, well, but I'm afraid of having to cover a show for an hour by myself. And I thought, well, I did that once already, so at least we know how that'll go. There's no telling, but I would like to have gotten a co-host. Malcolm and Kathy and Ginny and Ray Dean and whoever else joins us tonight. So I just have to push forward, act as if. That's what I learned. So I usually start out the show with AJ telling you I'm a lawyer in 3 states and, Illinois, Arizona, Texas, and that, I teach meditation at the Buddhist temple. Some other stuff, but I'll just lead off the show by telling you that, I'm learning to start the day pretty good these days. I remember a time when getting up could be challenging. It could have been complicated by depression. It could have been complicated by drug addiction, alcoholism. Could have been, just the thought of another day doing the same kind of arduous law practice that I'd done. When I worked with kids, hey, Nancy, when I worked with kids on the streets on the north side of Chicago, I used to get up every day. I loved my gig. I would get up. I couldn't even believe they paid me. Well, actually, they didn't pay me. I paid me because nobody else would pay me. Be that as it may, I enjoyed my work. I enjoyed it. It was tough at times because there were people that wanted to, kill you, because it was street gangs. So there were times when it was challenging. And then I took a job with the YMCA, and they paid me, by the way. And they used to hold my check in Alsip, Illinois, but I worked in Chicago. It was like a half-hour drive. And, Friday would come, and I didn't feel like driving. First off, traffic, whatever. Or whatever day was payday. I didn't always go get my check. It would be there when I got there. And they used to say to me, the ladies who handed out the check, the front desk staff would, I was the only one that didn't come get his check as soon as it was issued. I wasn't working for the check so much. I was doing it because I just dug what I was doing. Back then, kids often referred to me as Serpico because Serpico is very popular. And I was the same long hair, mustache, beard, and serape. Now that I'm thinking about it, Serpico kind of stole my look, or at least Al Pacino stole it in the movie. But because of my work on the streets, I was often called Serpico. And so, anyways, I dug it. I dug back then. And, and later, but I didn't get up early in the morning. Now I get up real early in the morning. And I went to somebody's pool today. This friend of mine invited a bunch of people from 12-Step Recovery. I go to a meeting from, first we did meditation from 6:30 to 7. 7 to 8, we had an AA meeting. And then, boom, had breakfast at the pool. Life is not going to get any better. In fact, probably tomorrow it'll get worse. But that's just the way it is. So now you know how I'm rolling. And so the show today consists of some legal issues. Earlier today, I received a letter which struck at the core. Ginny sent me a letter, and it was written by a Christian pastor. I don't know the guy, and it's irrelevant. He could be super duper popular, spiritual as all get out. I don't know. But I found his letter to the public, I guess, quite engaging. So what he did was he said that he was invited by White House staff to visit the southern border at McAllen, Texas. And while he was there, he found federal agents struggling to deal with a massive influx of poor and destitute human beings. And he described as coming in never-ending waves, because I'm sure he was there while these never-ending waves. And he says, please believe me when I tell you that the media and leftist politicians have not been truthful about what is going on there. It is a human tragedy. Pinche, hey. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know anybody that's denied it being a human tragedy except for the Trump administration. Normally, I don't talk about Trump, but I mean, this is the guy's letter. So those of you that know the show here, you know that I typically stay away from presidential politics. It's too divisive. It's too polarizing. Not that I care when I'm writing on Facebook, but for purposes of doing a broadcast, I've tried to stay even keel. So he says, I promised the exhausted U.S. Custom and Border Patrol agents I would go home and tell as many people as possible what I had seen up close and personal. And they asked him, do you want to get in? Do you want to talk to the people? You know, what do you want to do? They had a translator there for him. Contrast that with the media that was not invited by the White House staff, that couldn't get anywhere near the people who are in the camps. They weren't provided with anything. They weren't provided access. They weren't provided translation, nothing. So this guy's talking about the exhausted U.S. Customs Border. Now, I know Border Patrol. I live near the border. If they're exhausted, it's because they didn't sleep well last night, because they may have been out drinking. I don't know. But I will tell you, some of them work hard. I'm not saying they don't. But this exhaustion thing, there was just a former Border Patrol on TV about 25 minutes ago. And here's what she said. She said, when I was a Border Patrol agent, there were about 5,000 agents at that time, and we had about 1.5 million persons taken into custody at the border. And she said, it was tough. We processed it. She said, there are now 15,000 agents, and they are processing fewer arrivals than the 5,000 agents did. Now, she's the Border Patrol. I wasn't there with her. I'm not there now. You know, what's the agenda? Let's assume for a minute that the truth is somewhere in the middle. Okay? Approximately 5,500 people show up every day, according to him, in districts organized along our southern U.S. border. McAllen is the site of one of them. But it is the busiest and most besieged. The refugees, and he puts that in quotation marks, arrive exhausted and ragged from walking hundreds of miles. Among them are large numbers of children, many whom are unaccompanied by a caring adult. Because, you know, Mexicans and South Americans, Central, they really don't care about their kids anyways. They're like, hey, vaya, adios, man. Have a safe journey. Some of the kids were abused along the way. Many of them carried lice, scabies, and other diseases. By the way, this is almost verbatim what the president has been putting out into the public. This is not coming from people who have actually stood there and looked at them, okay? This guy purports to have done that. Currently in the facility I visited is experiencing a flu epidemic, and there are no additional beds on which to lie. Some of the women have been raped. More than 70 people of all ages are sent to local hospitals daily along the southern border. Medical staff are overwhelmed by their patient load. He says, remember that word, overwhelmed. It describes every aspect. And then he goes on to kind of, by the way, you can type comments, criticism, questions at any time, because I'm actually monitoring my Facebook and my Ken Goldberg's Lawn Disorder YouTube channel. So he goes on to talk about the plight of the people who arrived as if he is sympathetic. It's this pseudo sympathy. He pretends as if he cares because his Christian compassion. And then he's like, so the board agent takes him right up to the cage, and asks him, would you like to talk to them? Would you like to speak to them? He says it was a fenced area holding skinny young men. And he says their eyes were lifeless. And when asked what he wished to say, he said, tell them that God loves them and tell them that I love them. That was, be still my heart. I can feel the compassion, He said, he said, my heart aches for these poor people, lest I be misunderstood. Let me make clear that I am among the majority of Americans who want the border to be closed to those who attempt to enter illegally. By the way, there was the head of the Border Patrol was on earlier today. I can't remember his name. It's Italian stuff. And he pointed out that, thousands of these people actually arriving here legally, but because of the way they're doing it and overwhelming the system, they're creating a problem. He didn't call them illegals. A lot of them, he didn't suggest they were illegals. This is the party line. So he said there has to be a better solution. Okay. I've wondered why. You don't just deny, why don't we just deny them access? Why can't we just send them back? And he says, why haven't we built the wall? Because the leftists are impeding the wall. That's when I knew this guy is really a very compassionate guy. Only 10% of detainees are Mexicans, he says. This year alone, people have come to our southern border from 127 countries, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, Turkey, India, China, Palestine, Albania, San Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and other nations. They speak their native tongues, which means they can't be understood by each other or the staff. What are we to do with them? The Mexican government will not take them back. There's no place to send them. Our current laws do not permit us to repatriate them. This is a disaster. Well, the law is the law. And one of the issues that's going on right now at the border is, why is the American government openly flaunting their opposition and accommodation to the law? Now, there are crises throughout the world, and sometimes you got to bend or you'll break. So let's assume for a moment that the law had been too harsh. Then one of the things we could have done is we could have passed the bipartisan legislative bill that passed the Congress and the House. Passed the House and the Senate, which was in large measure had money for the border, had money partly for the wall, had money for the DACA kids, had appropriations to address a lot of the issues. There would have been more money for more judges to process them and more staff. But Donald Trump vetoed the legislation because at the time he knew that if he permitted DACA kids access to citizenship, he was going to be chased by those Republicans that believe that the DACA kids, that's the dreamers, are just waiting to all register as Democrats as soon as they're able to. Now, that may be true at this point, because if I was a DACA kid and saw the way Trump behaves towards people of color, I would become a Democrat too. So management of the border has a long history. A federal judge years ago issued a ruling called the Flores Settlement Agreement. It is still the source of many problems. Those damn judges. It requires that any unaccompanied alien child must be released within 72 hours. And then he goes into a whole thing about how these phony families arrive merely to take advantage of this agreement so that they can be released. They don't even speak English. It's funny that they know our laws so well. They don't speak English to us, to each other. They don't even know enough to communicate with each other, he just said. Okay. In addition to the influx of people from places around the world steeped in poverty and despair, Senator Chuck Schumer authored and helped pass a lottery system whereby winners are brought to the United States. He also said that these people are given a court case and released because there's not enough room to hold them. They don't do that anymore, by the way. And the vast majority are never seen. And then he goes on to say, most of them become anchor babies who are citizens with rights to bring members of their families. That's not true. If you're fleeing and not appearing in court and you're not a citizen, there's no way you can be transformed into an anchor baby. There is no legal procedure or political procedure wherein you can take somebody who is not here legally and transform them into an anchor baby. So the guy's an idiot is what I'm saying. Anyways, it goes on. I don't know. He wants a wall. He says that the Democrats are standing in the way of protecting the United States. He says, and he did a paragraph or two about the poor, exhausted border agents. Talked about what compassion and all of this good stuff, what real human beings they are. Of course, he didn't know that the news would break in the last 24 hours that there was a Facebook group, a covert closed Facebook group of Border Patrol agents, which was racist and it was disgusting. But let's pretend that's just a few thousand Border Patrol agents. That's not that big a problem. But the fact of the matter is, if you've ever lived along the border and passed through checkpoints, if you think those pinche cabrones are compassionate, they don't treat American citizens right. You ask anybody who lives near the border, and they will tell you that there's nothing much more arrogant than a Border Patrol agent. And part of that, my theory has always been, they're so used to dealing with illegals that even when they go to lunch at Corral, what is it, Golden Corral? They don't know how to act around Americans. I'm going to tell you that. But I'm a lawyer. So when you mistreat me, I'm ready for you. I don't care. I mean, these guys are large. They're just act like bullies in public around U.S. citizens. And when they talk to you at the border checkpoints, or not just border checkpoints around the United States, they will never, ever sometimes treat you with a measure of respect. You go to the checkpoint outside Sierra Blanca, any of you, okay? You tell me, how is it that 15 border agents with dogs and rifles and everything standing around, all got the same pair of dark sunglasses, baby? You know, it's all about looking like the Terminator. You know, it's all about intimidation. I ain't buying it, man. There's got to be something besides that one pair of Ray-Bans, okay? So I want to conclude this disturbing account of the border situation with a suggested action item for the reader. There is one solution, as I see it, which is for people of faith to pray for our president as he seeks to deal with this humanitarian crisis. He is facing enormous opposition from both political parties, the mainstream media, the entertainment industry, the judiciary, portions of agriculture, powerful lobbies, and virtually every dimension of the culture. I know of no one with political influence besides the president who seems to care about the crisis at the border. Will you join us in making it a matter for concerted prayer? Signed, James C. Dobson, PhD. I know I shouldn't say this. It's a snide remark, but I'd like to see where he got his PhD from. I'll look into that. I'm thinking it was one of those online courses. And he's the founder and president of whatever this is that he was writing for. So, I'm willing to acknowledge that even with, 3-4 times the amount of agents, I can't tell you how many vehicles there are in southern Texas, southern Arizona, and southern California. Border Patrol vehicles, Border Patrol drones. They are one of the most highly funded agencies in the United States under Homeland Security. Okay? There's a boatload of money. Now, is it enough money? I don't know. But if you keep citing, as Republicans often do, if you keep citing that we don't have enough immigration judges to evaluate these cases, then it would behoove you to have taken the money that was offered and put it and hire some judges. If you're saying that you're having difficulty vetting the people there because there's a lot of people, then sometimes you got to speed up the process. But why aren't I not buying it? Because when I owned the DFW gun range, I worked with the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol and Customs used to come shoot at DFW gun, and their office was right across the highway from me, 6 lanes, 8 lanes. People would go there at 8 in the morning and not get seen until 4 p.m. These were people who were here legally, who had to go in for whatever the next step was. People would stand out there, no accommodations, okay? Once the waiting room fills up, people have to wait. They've got deadlines they've got to meet. They would stand out there for 8 hours trying to get in to see an immigration officer to move their case forward. Now, if it was that hard 20 years ago, and it's getting harder, then you have to put more resources into it. But let's pretend you just don't want to. You don't want to put more resources into processing them more quickly or having more judges. Then spend the money on toothpaste. Spend the money on towels and soap. I don't know what to tell you. I know that this artificial sympathy that's being generated for the administration's dilemma is one of their own making. So in my relationships with other people, I have friends, and I keep them at arm's distance because when they come to you, they're bemoaning the fact that something about life is cruel and they're a victim, and poor them. Or as they say in AA, pour me a drink. Okay, so you sit there and you're listening, you're like, well, there's a lot of this you did to yourself. Why didn't you, for instance, take that job that was offered you? Well, I didn't like the way, whatever, ABC, right? All I'm saying is fix it. So there were fixes in the make. How do you have a bipartisan bill that says we're going to address a lot of these issues, reject the bill out of bipartisan, one of the few bipartisan bills that's come before the president, and then say, but nobody wants to do anything about the problem? No, what you said was do it my way or the highway. Well, now the highway is flooded with immigrants, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. All right, so you're welcome to look up James C. Dobson, PhD. Somewhere in there, I thought he said he's a pastor. He was invited by the White House. He gets to go visit people at the border, but not a congressperson. I mean, just turn on your TV, kids, and look at the number of congresspeople that have tried to personally investigate who were told of the obstacles to a congressperson. If the Border Patrol is going to treat congresspeople like trash, believe me, I already know how they're going to treat me. Now, let me correct that. I already know how they tried to treat me. All right, so here's something that very few of you know. And on a happier note, oh, hi, Rosie. Welcome to the show. Welcome everybody to the show. Kathleen, if you're still out there, welcome to the show. And let's see. Whoops. I'm trying to set up the board here so I know what's going on. I had it all set up earlier. Okay. I did. All right, we're back. Okay, so on a brighter note, I'm done with the border for now. I'm really angry. I'm really frustrated, and I'm sorry that I'm in Dallas. Only, what I'm trying to say is I should be out there lawyering. My ex-wife Lori suggested I should get involved, and I don't deny that I should get involved, but I don't know anything about immigration law anymore. Number one. Number two, it's a long way, and I got troubles of my own. No. So, digital rights management, DRM. So, digital rights management is how Amazon and other electronic platforms control digital goods that they sell. I never knew this. So apparently, Microsoft has announced that they're going to shut down their ebook business. And in the process, they are going to reclaim all the ebooks they sold. Now, that ebook will be in a digital format on your computer somewhere, and apparently it will disappear. Now, they're going to reimburse you because Microsoft got a lot of money, and to do otherwise would be a public relations fiasco. But it could have been not Microsoft. It could have been somebody else who sold you something. So Amazon, Microsoft, iTunes retain control. So let me just read a little bit from the article. It says your iTunes movies, your Kindle books, they are not really yours. You don't own them. You bought a license that allows you to access them, a license which can be revoked at any time. So Microsoft will be taking all its books. Now, part of the reason Microsoft is doing this is the platform never caught on, or I don't know if it's called platform. The ebook store never caught on. But if you bought the reader for their books and you bought the books, you're now without the books. You have to start over. You'll get a refund, but you're going to have to shop for the books. You may have to shop for a reader, the appropriate reader, if you're using a different platform. So Amazon, I thought this was interesting. In 2009, vanished copies of, get this one, George Orwell's 1984 from Kindle. What ironic turn of events, isn't it, that they would, of all books, make disappear, right? Okay, so because digital rights management, you will have no recourse should the owner decide to reclaim their property. Now, I sort of knew something about like streaming services. I understood that as long as I paid my monthly fee, I had access to all this music. I could download, I could do stuff. But that if I stopped paying, I wouldn't own this stuff anymore. And that's one of the reasons I didn't go that way. I did make a, let's call it a mistake. Somebody turned me on to a website, and I was buying tunes for, I don't know, 10 cents, 20 cents for a single, and, $1.50 for an album. So I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. A lot of music, and I was buying it, and I would download it to my computer, but sometimes I wouldn't because the website retained a copy of what I bought. Plus, I had money in the bank there, so I could spend when I wanted to. And one day I went to the shop for some music, and the website was gone. It says gone. And so I looked it up, and here's what I found out. It was a Russian website that was apparently illegally selling the music, and Russia just shut it down at some point. It was gone. I'm not opposed to that if they were illegally selling the music and the performers wasn't getting any piece of it, but they took everybody's deposits too. I only lost a couple of dollars. Some people surely lost a lot more money. So be warned. Oh, well, there's a page too. So frequently asked question. They now have posted that your books will be removed from Microsoft Edge when they process refunds in early July. So if you have any books from Microsoft, better get on the case. I guess you could buy non-DRM controlled material, but how would you know? There's have to be some sort of clear and conspicuous claim or disclaimer. You know that disclaimers used to be hidden, and they often still are. But in certain industries where disclaimers were abused, like the auto sales industry, used to be horrible. The courts finally began to intervene, and then the legislatures. And so things that were disclaimers that should be obvious had to be printed in an alternate color like red, had to be in large enough type and italics. And a lot of the abuse began to diminish when they were forced. For some reason, I don't know, corporations just don't always show their best face. Along the lines of computers, I like this next story. Millions, let me repeat a couple of things. You're listening to Ken Goldberg's Law and Disorder. Hey, Lee Ashley, if you're still there. Usually we have AJ's computer alongside me, and she's broadcasting her page, and she's got 2,500, 2,700 people that are friends with her on Facebook. So they don't say much, but I get to watch all these people watching us. I don't have that. So there. I'm a victim. So this next computer story. Millions of minor criminal cases in Pennsylvania will be automatically wiped clean from public databases. So starting soon, there will be an automatic computer process which will begin sealing millions of criminal records from public databases as a result of Pennsylvania's clean slate law. I love it. The law is the first in the nation to automatically seal some criminal records using technology. So it's for nonviolent crimes. They estimate about 30 million cases may be eligible for automatic sealing. They think they'll be able to seal about 2.5 million cases each month until they get through. And so this law has been was passed a year ago. With the, I guess they always put legislative history and intent when they do a bill, or they're supposed to. And so lawyers, when we want to argue for or against the bill, a lot of times we're directed to the legislative history, where then we get to say, well, this interpretation of this law is wrong because if you look at the legislative history. Anyways, it says here that the intention was to help low-level offenders get jobs, housing, college admissions, and loans, which we have talked on this show before. AJ and I have talked about the impediments to a fruitful life with a simple low-level convictions, marijuana convictions, and the fact that, you know, even what I would call a minor felony makes it even worse. These are going to be misdemeanors, and so people whose charges were dropped will be eligible for automatic sealing after 60 days. That should have been a no-brainer. So the charges were dropped. So just so we all know what that means, when a case is processed and it goes to the prosecutor, so you're arrested, your case sent over to prosecutors. Prosecutors may choose not to pursue the case for a variety of reasons. They don't think it's strong enough, even though they originally approved it. Whoever went to later on said, yeah, this is, or a prosecutor after the police started getting ready for trial and discovered that it wasn't what they thought it was. Witnesses weren't cooperating. Witnesses were contradicting what they said. And so the case is dropped. That case just goes away. That should be gone. Then the next level is people who have low-level convictions will be eligible if they avoid additional convictions for 10 years. They completed all the court-ordered obligations. So if in the last 10 years you had an issue, you didn't pay your probation fees, you didn't pay restitution, you're not going to be eligible. But you did everything you were supposed to do. The court found you were in compliance. They ordered your case done. Okay, closed. So people who satisfy the 10-year requirement can have records sealed for summary convictions, which are the most minor kinds of offenses in Pennsylvania, and a second or third degree misdemeanor punishable by 2 years or less in prison. Now that's interesting. I want to tell you that when I was in law school, 85, 86, 87, a misdemeanor was almost universally defined as a crime for which you could not receive a sentence of more than 1 year in jail, or $1,000 fine. I know Illinois was that way, and most states. The fact that there are misdemeanors punishable by 2 years or less in prison is interesting, because I'm surely means that the fines are higher too. I like to explain my terms. Jail is a place where people go to wait for a trial, a resolution of their case, a hearing. They are held because they are either, one, unable to post the bond that was set, or two, they violated an existing probation and the judge refused to set bail, as he has the authority to withhold bail on a probation violation. The last category of people in a jail are people who have been sentenced under misdemeanor laws or potentially a felony, but the sentence was less than 1 year. So they keep them in a jail instead of shipping them off to a prison. So that's the difference between prison and jail. When you heard me going, only 1 year less in jail, but these people talking about prison. So people convicted of first-degree misdemeanors will not automatically qualify for sealing, but they can still go to a judge and ask that their records be sealed so that they will be able to get on with their lives. And of course, they will have to have avoided any subsequent convictions. The records will not necessarily be destroyed. They will still be accessible to police and the courts. They won't be accessible to your landlord or your employer, that kind of thing. So I suggest, if you live in Pennsylvania and you're like me, I tried to think whether it would benefit me, and it would. As I had, I don't know how many misdemeanor issues, and the law in Illinois was, so I got a drug case in 1971. In 1971, they placed me on what's called court supervision. And the sentence was, although it was a felony, I had to go to drug classes. I had to give urine samples. And I had to stay out of trouble for a year. If I did that, my case would be dismissed, which I was talking about earlier. It means there's no prosecution. So I succeeded. I was eligible for an expungement. If I wanted to pay, I could have gone to a court at some point and asked them to expunge my record. I didn't really think about it. Then I got convicted of a firearm violation, so that was on my record. When I went to law school, there were some other, cases, but those were the ones. Those two cases are what I'm pivoting right now on. My other misdemeanors were for things like disorderly conduct or whatever. So, hey, Randall. So what happens is I apply to law school. I'm now 33. And my family and I are talking about, do you think it matters that you have this criminal history? Well, I already knew, but my father hired this lawyer who I think was sleazeball, because he should have said right on the phone, he said, you don't give me any money. Your kid's not eligible for an expungement. Why? Because once you are convicted in the state of Illinois for anything, your entire criminal history from behind you, even if it was expungable, is no longer expungable. Everything is locked in place. So my criminal history was locked in place in 1975 when I was arrested for unlawful use of a weapon in the city of Chicago. So I wondered, well, and by the way, nothing hardly shows on my criminal history anymore, because the misdemeanors, being 40 years old, 35, 40 years old, the state of Illinois decided they weren't going to keep those records. And the felony, that's out there. But that's a supervision. That's not a conviction. So every time I go to another state to get a law license, I have to report even the stuff that's not discoverable by a normal investigation. I'm under an obligation to reveal all criminal history. I talked on a previous show with AJ that when you go to apply to be a lawyer in whatever state, you got to tell them if you got outstanding traffic incidents. In Illinois, you have to tell them if you have outstanding parking tickets, and you're going to pay all your parking tickets before you get your license. I didn't have any of that, and I hadn't had any recent trouble with the law. I had trouble earlier, but I didn't have any trouble before. In fact, I remember one guy. Hey, Kathy. So I got to school one day after I graduated, and had gotten my license, and everybody was standing around this one guy, and they were commiserating with him because he hadn't gotten his license. He was another older student like me. And so I'm sitting there, I walk up and I said, so, what happened? They didn't give me my license, Character and Fitness turned around. Well, what happened? He had an armed robbery about 5 years earlier. So I said, well, what the hell did you think they were going to do? And he just looked at me with hate-filled eyes and said, you should talk. Because everybody knew I had history. Anybody who knows me knows I got history. So I don't know. My stuff was 20 years old, at least 15 years old when I got to law school. This guy's talking 5 years. I ain't have no armed robbery conviction. Anyways, why did I go off on that tear? I don't even remember. Oh, because of the law. So I looked and I'm like, yeah, even if they had a law, I really couldn't take advantage of it. But Illinois kind of took advantage. So every time I apply, I have to reveal. When I go to get my firearms license, I'm eligible for firearms license in every state. But they always ask, and I always tell them that I had a gun conviction in 1975. And they always ask me to get a letter from the state of Illinois saying it was a misdemeanor. And so I tried to contact Illinois. The best you can get from Illinois is the following, which I thought was kind of cute. I wish I still had the letter. It said, by virtue of the fact that we can find no file, by definition, it must have been a misdemeanor because we don't throw out felonies. So his gun conviction, therefore, by deduction, had to have been a misdemeanor. And then I get my gun license. All right. And then my last story, and then, y'all join in anytime you want on this stuff. Ken Goldberg's YouTube channel, Ken Goldberg's Law and Disorder. Okay. Last legal case I got. I kind of tried to prep, but at the last minute, I thought this one was interesting because there's a lot of talk in the last year or so about reparations. The 20, what is it? And a mule, 20 acres and a mule. Black people asking for reparations. And a lot of the white people I know today are going, I had nothing to do with slavery, as if they were being personally asked to give the reparations. So as somebody who grew up in a community that had been ravaged by the ill effects of slavery in the south side of Chicago, what I mean by that is I knew people who were the grandchildren. I grew up with people who were the grandchildren of slaves. And the ill effects of slavery were very obvious. It's like somehow when you magically tell somebody they're freed, but you don't give them a job, now doesn't fix everything. And so there's been a discussion about reparations. Whatever form that takes, we recoil at the idea of providing reparations to people we may have harmed. So I saw this article. Japan, a Japanese court ordered compensation for the relatives of leprosy patients. And here's why. A Japanese court ordered the government on Friday to pay 3.4 million in damages to the relatives of former leprosy patients because for years after there was a cure for leprosy, they continued to segregate lepers, and they were not able to be with their families. And the kids, for instance, of parents. So one of the plaintiffs described the fact that when she was around 11, the government came and took whoever it was or her parents away, and then she was given another family, but she was taunted repeatedly in school because they said, "Oh, you got it now." So here's an interesting thing. Well, there were more than 12,000 leprosy patients that were kept at 14 isolated sanatoriums across the country. And by the way, a bunch of them were sterilized unwillingly. 1,500 remain at the facilities today with their ties to families and society severed. Wow, that's so harsh, right? In the ruling, the judge said Japan's parliament, through legislative negligence, destroyed the families and caused tremendous damage to their lives. Wow, can you imagine an American judge saying anything like that? So then they interviewed some older people who are, I told you about the girl who's, was taunted on, and she gets married. And then when her husband finds out, he treats her badly because she's the child of leper parents. A 2001 court decision found the segregation policy unconstitutional and prompted government reparations, but only to the former patients. So many of these other family members were never given access, so your family has died, so there's no reparations, but, you had to take care of them after they were released from the sanatorium, and you had the difficulties associated with being from a leprosy family. Okay. She said, well, we kept the disease a secret. We felt embarrassed about our loved ones, and we acted as if they didn't exist. So they were reparations to a bunch of families who were adversely affected by the legislation and the actions of the government in isolating and severing their relations between the healthy and the unhealthy. I find that kind of ick. So anyway, so Law and Disorder took a departure today. Not because AJ was gone. I would have taken this departure anyways. I mean, I watch a lot of news, man. I watch Fox even, okay? I want to know what's being said. I got to tell you, whatever your personal belief system is, Fox is the most namby-pamby bunch of bitches I've ever seen, man. I mean, the stuff they're saying, it's like fluff, man. I mean, get real. Nothing bad ever happens in the Fox world except Democrats. Okay, I take that back. Now, MSNBC, CNN are not that much better. They're the opposite side of that coin. There's a lot of fluff pieces about Democrats and, but the problem is that this administration, rightfully or wrongly, I would say unequivocally wrongly, has alienated the press by accusing them of reporting fake news, which I've studied this assiduously. Is not any fake news, okay? Why alienate the people by accusing them falsely and then expect them to be friendly to you? So he's accused NBC and CNN of things that they didn't do. He's called them the enemy of the people, and then he perpetuates the myth by saying, look, they don't say anything nice about me. I wouldn't say anything nice about you either. But I've stayed away from that particular arena, the presidential politics, because in the main, we don't need to discuss it. You're quite capable of doing your own deal. But there's another larger issue, and that is when you begin to gravitate towards these uh, policies, not gravitate, embrace these policies. When you turn a blind eye to bad policies because you're getting what you think you want, white supremacy, Aryan supremacy, maybe it is, closing the borders, saving the farms, saving coal, whatever your issue is, if your personal embrace, if your personal allegiance to your one issue means that you will sell everybody else down the river, well, that's not patriotism. That's nationalism, maybe at some level, but it isn't patriotism, you know. And I posted on Facebook today because I was agitated. Okay. I mean, what's going on at the border made me mull over what's going on, what was going on right from the beginning with the Trump administration. How did we allow Senator McCain to be kicked under the bus, both while alive and while dead? I was never a fan of McCain. I never spoke ill of him either. The worst I said about him was that when he ran for president the second time, he had shifted from moderate politics to extreme right politics because he embraced, in an effort to win the White House, he embraced the evangelical movement, the moral majority. And it didn't look good on him at all because he had been a moderate up until then in a lot of ways. So I criticized him for it, but how can you demean somebody for being a POW, prisoner of war? That just always struck me as wrong. Before there was a Trump, I didn't know. I just don't know anybody that picked on him for being a prisoner of war. And I thought, I've seen enough about the Hanoi Hilton and its like to know the severe conditions that these military personnel suffered in Vietnam. So what kind of country have we become when we've allowed the president to denigrate that kind of service, especially a president who didn't serve? How is that there's this silence, this horrible silence about something like that? Well, so why would I expect any of those people to begin to voice opposition to the types of things I am seeing at the border? And I'm telling you, I'm watching the news, man. So when they come on and say it's lovey-dovey, everybody's got water, listen, even if they had fresh water available for everybody, logistically, if you look at the pens and the cages that they're being held in, there's a logistic nightmare getting them fresh water, okay? And this is not staff that was trained to maintain prisons. Okay, this is staff that when they were trained to drive around in Jeeps along the border and make apprehensions. They were never given the kind of training that would result in the type of management of persons who are incarcerated. My anticipation is there will be a violent incident in one or more of the camps. My guess is that some Border Patrol will be hurt. And then what will happen is the administration will use that injury to say, see what criminals they are. The closest thing I think of, which makes me think this is very viable, is Arizona, back about 9 years ago, took all nice prisoners, nonviolent offenders, pretty decent group, a cluster of them, and they shipped them off to a brand new prison in Indiana. It was a private prison. It was brand new. And so there was money involved, right? And they didn't tell them they were being moved for security reasons. I didn't tell them they were moved because they would have objected because they were all Arizona prisoners. A lot of them had Arizona family. Anyways, they got to Indiana, and the Indiana prison was completely out of its element. It was brand new, didn't know what it was doing, and there was a riot. There was a riot, and even the governor at the time of Arizona said, maybe something went wrong here because, these people that were shipped there because they were going to be easy to maintain. And the harder core prisoners would remain in the Arizona prison system where they had the kinds of administration and guards that could handle them. The subsequent investigation in Indiana showed that one, besides being brand new and being private, these guards were underpaid, under-supervised. They didn't have enough guards for the population they brought in. It was a fiasco. So again, back to the border issue, regardless of what you believe about, whether these immigrants should be arriving at our borders or not, and what the viability is of the United States to absorb them, believe me, we got a lot of absorption we can do. We're one of the least populated countries in the world, and we're insulated. So assume you don't want to give up a single job. There's still what we call the Geneva Convention, which we agreed to. In fact, we promoted. In fact, we helped craft the Geneva Convention. And there are certain rules that the Geneva Convention says you play by. We're not playing by those rules. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, and sometimes you have to bend so you don't break, but bending shouldn't be at the expense of people's actual safety, health, safety, welfare. Find some other way to do it. Get creative, or come back, sit down at the table tomorrow with Congress, stimulate that bipartisan bill that you vetoed. Get these senators and these representatives to sit down and just get that one bill going. Okay, there was billions of dollars in there. There was no reason to veto it. So if you have friends whose only input is Fox News, listen, I watched it. I'm not making this up. I'm not relying on CNN or MSNBC to tell me what Fox News is like. It's a fluff, man. It's fluff pieces, dude. They ain't saying a word. They're just talking heads, man. They don't even have on the kind. So let's pretend, no, we don't pretend. Let's say MSNBC has a lot of political hacks. It has its own agenda, but at least they're bringing in some really highly qualified people into their, whatever you call that grouping, that gathering. I know there's a word for it, but panel, their panel. They have people that are highly qualified to be on the panel, whether they've got whatever their agenda is. They're professors of prestigious universities. They're people who have worked in the areas that they're being interviewed in. They're people that ran the previous administrations, a housing administration, or the wildlife, whatever it is. At least CNN and MSNBC and some of the other stations make an effort to bring in people who can be articulate based upon their own personal knowledge and experience. I go to Fox, baby, I'm going to tell you, man, their thing is Judge Jeanine, because 12 years ago, she was on the court for a couple of years. And so they're still using her as a legal expert. She hasn't done anything lately. They still refer to her as judge, which actually, under the ethical rules, if you were once a judge, you're entitled to be called judge for life unless you're receiving income in another capacity, such as a pundit. Then you're supposed to drop the judge. Jeanine, whatever her last name is, should have dropped it when she became paid. As long as she was just, hey, yeah, oh, you want to talk to me? Sure, I'm at home. Oh, I'm in my pajamas. What do you want to talk about? Okay, Judge Jeanine. She stopped being Judge Jeanine a long time ago. Judge Napolitano, same thing. He's a political hack, but at least he's a political hack who has called out the administration because based upon his legal experience, he knows that they're committing wrongs which border on or result in crimes. So people that tell me there's no evidence, there's no this, there's no that, forget about it, man. Change the channel. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid, baby. Okay? So, but like I said, this show, we strayed from staying out of this because you cannot indict what's going on at the border on our part. Forget what the immigrants do. On our part, you cannot without indicting the administration because he's calling the shots. He's calling the shots. He's creating the crisis, and then he's pissing and moaning everybody about this crisis as if he hasn't got anything to do with it, and then twist it to make it a thing about the Democrats. For those of you that are Republicans, let me be very clear. The Democrats promoted and got an agreement with the Republicans in the Senate and in the House to pass bipartisan legislation which would address many of the issues. And the ultimate deciding factor in the veto was that these kids that we call DACA, okay, he did not want to give them access to citizenship. And because, as Mitch McConnell and others said, they're just going to vote Democrat. That's not supposed to be the base upon which we decide whether you are eligible for citizenship. We're supposed to have objective criteria, which was established for the DACA kids. They were not permitted to get involved in any legal situations. Their financial situation has to be clean. They have to re-up every so often. They have to pay fees to maintain their status. They've been here a long time. There was all kinds of cleansing criteria to make sure that they were subsequently going to be good citizens. That's what the DACA kids are. And the access to citizenship was something that's been talked about by previous administrations, both Republican and Democrat. The problem has always been how to do it. And when they finally reached some kind of consensus about how to proceed, Trump and only Trump vetoed that bill. So you can't, that's crying wolf, baby. If you brought the wolf to the party, you can't be crying about it. They start eating the sheep. Boy, sucker, you brought the wolf, man. So don't complain to me. I think they should resurrect. That was the word they should resurrect whatever legislation already had bipartisan agreement. They should pass it. They should start addressing the problems at the border and begin to alleviate this pain that's going on. And the other thing they should do, we were giving money to foreign governments to try to improve the quality of life in other countries, San Salvador. Most of these countries, which, by the way, historically, we're the ones that screwed them up. But, I don't want to dwell on that, even though it's a good dwell, by the way. Well, we've been giving money, and some of these governments are corrupt, and some of the money doesn't seem to do any good. So instead of not giving them money, maybe we should ask the smart people, how do we channel the money in a way that it will get to the people that need it? How will it create jobs? How will it alleviate some of the poverty? How will it create housing that's habitable? Because a lot of these people, by the way, this article by this pastor, he talks about the hovels. These people sell everything they have, including their shanty, to get to the United States. Shanties, okay? They're not selling 5-bedroom homes to get here. That's not who's sitting in a pen right now down at the border. So I'm just urging everybody to understand that whatever propaganda you are listening to, there is a humanitarian crisis, not an illegal immigration crisis. People have been coming here, and they may arrive by the thousands sometimes. That's not our crisis. We have the capability to deal with that. We are creating a humanitarian crisis because somebody believes that the suffering that they cause now will be the deterrent that keeps the next person, who, by the way, doesn't know what's going on, right? That's going to deter them. This is done as a penalizing undertaking. It is not done as a humanitarian undertaking, which is overwhelmed and gone wrong. This is being done openly as a means of causing suffering in order to secure votes, okay? And in order to deter some of the people coming by saying, oh, look, you're going to be treated badly. So we treat them badly in order to do that. It's like when I had a judge sentence a kid to 60 years. He killed somebody, but he was nuts. He was a nutty kid. He didn't mean to kill anybody, but yeah, you go to prison. But the range was 20 to 60, and she gave him 60. Nobody got 60 for shooting somebody when they were 19. Nobody. What I didn't know at the time is she was going to run for the appellate court. So she was using my client to raise her profile. I didn't know that at the moment. But, she said from the bench, she said, I'm giving him the maximum sentence. I'm giving 40 years above the minimum sentence at the age of 19 years old to deter others like him. And I said to her, then that presupposes that my client, when he shot this other kid, gang kid, he sat there and went, oh, let's see, 20 to 60. I'm betting I'll get 20 on this. Boom. No. And the next kid wasn't going to go, oh, I heard there was a guy who got 60 years. Doesn't work. That's not how you deter crime. You deter crime by addressing mental illness, poverty, and all the conditions that create a loss of value in human life, such as we're seeing at the border. All right. So I teach meditation at the Buddhist Center of Dallas, 8484 Stultz Road in Dallas, Texas, every Wednesday night at 7. AJ, my co-host, she manages the Cosmic Yogi Festival coming up in November. She teaches yoga at a couple places, including Sun Yoga Center in Richardson. And, I'm a lawyer. I don't know that I want to promote that, man. It's not the most fun I've ever had lately. So if you want to contact me, you can email me at ken@law-disorder.com. If you see me biking, you can wave to me. You can be my friend on Facebook. Don't matter to me. So, and last thing I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have a friend that didn't get to watch the show, because this was live, it's going to be on the internet. And apparently, if more people start watching it, it strengthens AJ's position as our main marketer, that we're worthy of bigger and better things. All right. So good night to you also. And peace out.